Figuring out your future can feel overwhelming when you're just starting out, but the United States Air Force can give you the support you need. With over 200 different career fields, there's a place for you to serve. Whether you want to provide health care to your fellow airmen, work to maintain valuable aircraft, or secure every base or something in between, the Air Force will give you all the top training and education you need to excel. You'll also have the chance to travel all over the world while serving your country. A decision to join the Air Force will be one that you will never forget or regret. Contact Staff Sergeant Benish at 505-239-3845 to find out more information.
Opioids can change your life like they did mine. My addiction started after my surgery. Soon, I couldn't live without them. I wasn't getting high anymore. I just wanted the physical withdrawals to stop. At that point, my safety, health, career, none of it mattered. But I found a solution. Visit anotherwaynm.com to find alternative ways to treat pain. That's anotherwaynm.com. Don't let my story become your story. Paid for by the New Mexico Department of Health.
You're listening to JW
Mark
Raw.
Sayes actually came to our book signing party. It's the last time I saw him.
And we are live. What's up out there? JW Raw podcast. You might remember Eminem. Well, they're not here anymore. We're taking over. Dr. Beau is in the building. And here are the couple of leaders in our community, Dr. Nuzzo and Brandon Six-Gun Gibson, a couple celebrities around New Mexico. So thanks for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's good to see you, Doc.
Yeah. So you guys were already giving your credentials off air. So you want to go ahead and repeat all of your, distinct awards, all those things you guys have done over the years?
I started working in our local city government for the city of Albuquerque when I was 16 years old. So 21 years later, I'm still with the same organization. I've worked my way up from I started off as a lifeguard, and now I'm an associate director for the city.
Impressive.
I've been a naturopathic physician for 36 years. My uncle was a naturopath. I actually studied with the founder of the profession. So I practiced in Illinois, did my practice there for almost 20 years till I came to New Mexico. And I founded the Clinic of Naturopathic Medicine in New Mexico up in Santa Fe. And in 2010 opened Southwest University of Naturopathic Medicine, where we're training doctors that work here at Jackson Wink and with you at Ortho Elite, and just really been in the manual medicine field for the last 40 years of my life. So
yeah, well, it's awesome having both of you guys. And you used to work with Sweetness, right?
I did. Yeah, we were just talking about that. Walter was a patient of mine for years back in Illinois, and I worked with him. I started working with him in 1980. And worked with him, through the Super Bowl championship, and really right till the night before he passed away. He left us way too soon. He would be 65 years old.
Wow.
July 25th.
So did you learn the Super Bowl shuffle also?
I absolutely did.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
He wouldn't let me work on him unless I did that. So.
Did you know the rap song too?
Yeah.
Yeah, Walter was. He had the name Sweetness, and
Right.
it rang true. He was really a beautiful human being, wonderful man. Yeah.
And did you memorize Jim McMahon's line in that song?
Oh man, no.
The punky quarterback.
The punky quarterback. I was trying to remember. He had a Roselle headband on, right?
I gotcha.
Yeah, he was. They were characters.
Yeah.
They were characters.
And then you guys probably know Brandon Gibson. Obviously, he's a prolific striking coach at Jackson Wink, and he's cornered 20 World Championship UFC title fights now.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been very privileged to get to train under two of the greatest coaches in the game and learn at the highest level from the get-go. So much like you in your field, Beau, you seek out the best, and then you just are able to learn at the highest level.
I'm just a simple podcast host here. But it's great to have two high-level professionals at the top of their profession here today, and it's really exciting. So, Brandon's, he's doing everything these days, so he's going to head out in about 10 minutes. So we're going to dive deep into naturopathic stuff. I know a lot of you guys that have come over from the Instagram, you're interested in what that field is. But first and foremost, you guys probably don't know about Brandon's leadership abilities. You just see him in the corner of John Jones and all these great fighters. And I wanted you guys to give some experience and talk talk a little bit about the things that make great organizations run, and some tips and some interesting stories if either of you guys have any of those. I'd like to shed a little light on the non-striking coach side of Brandon Gibson.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Dr. Nuzzo, well, I don't know the striking coach, but
Yeah.
the entrepreneur, medical board guy, all those kind of things. So who wants to, you guys got questions for each other? Jump in there.
I'll jump in. You know, right now in my current role, I supervise about 800 employees. And it's tiered down like superintendents under me, then assistant superintendents, and then management level, then blue collar and clerical, and seasonal temp, student interns. So there's a lot of moving parts. And one of the things I've learned kind of coming up through the ranks is that I will not be an expert at everything. That's not my role to be the expert at everything. My role is to be like a provider, a supporter, a collaborator, somebody that could inspire people at times. But much like Greg and Wink do here, my job in the city is based around morale. So the more I could keep the morale up and keep people happy doing their jobs, because there's not always going to be a pay raise. There's not always going to be some monetary incentive. People have to find real joy and passion in their job and passion in the process. And, if you score everything just like in the fight game in wins and losses, then everything's always teetering on that result and not the process itself. So I try to instill that like in my, big organizational structures. Just love that job, love it every day, have people work together the best they can, and show up with a smile on your face and a goal that we're able to serve our community and leave Albuquerque better for the next generation.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. I try to bring my passion to what I do, and I do bring my passion to what I do, and that's how I lead. I lead by example. I really try to, keep a uplifting spirit in the clinic, in the patients. When you work on patients and patients come into your office, they're really looking for, to feel better. You got to feel better in order to feel better, So it's about attitude, a lot of it is about attitude. And as, we move from just treating patients to opening a school and getting students in, getting them to think positive and to be motivated for what they do and find passion in what they do is really the key to success. Mm-hmm. If you're passionate and if you can talk with passion about what you love and what you do, it's contagious. And that's what I see. We have many students in the clinic. We have many patients, and people walk in and out of that place all day long, and they're happy and they're smiling, and they're getting help. That's really it. Just put yourself into something. You got to find your passion. That's the most important thing that I can share with anybody. You got to find what you love to do. You work all day long, to go to a job and not put yourself into it. I never understood that, and I see a lot of people do that, and I try to, just again lead by example. Just be out front with those people.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. And I know both of you gentlemen, you wear multiple hats. So obviously, an entrepreneur, you started a school, and you're still working on patients to this day. Brandon is a striking coach. He works in the evenings, mornings. He's also working his regular job. And both of you guys have, families, wives, young kids. How do you find balance between those things and finding enough time for you to be able to recoup and find your own personal time? What are some of the keys that you find to, not only keep yourself nurtured, but to make sure you have enough to put into your other jobs? Because you guys are wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah, originally part of the reason why I would go to the gym after school was to just kind of break some stress up, right? And as school turned into a career, it was the same thing. I'd get out of work, I'd go to the dojo. It'd feel good to grapple, to hit the bag, to hold pads every now and then. And so my release from kind of my daytime job was to come into the dojo. And while my role here has changed and now it carries a lot more responsibility, it still kind of doesn't matter what problems I have from the day. By the time I leave the dojo, it's free and clear. So it's always been an important balance to me to be able to come into the gym, get a big physical release, and then be able to really relax at night. And helps me find that balance and stay motivated. And then my brain's firing again at night, like thinking of the things I want to do in my day job or the things I want to do here. And but it's definitely balanced, and it can be a little out of whack at times. Like there's been times I've had to dial back in the gym to find balance in my day job or find balance with my family and be a good father, which is my most important job.
Yeah. it's a daily struggle. I mean, there's no, I mean, for myself, I mean, I work every day at balance. You have to, because you can just get consumed in what you do, you know, and there are other things in life that are important, and you've got to focus, and you got to try to work on, you know, taking care of yourself, you know. I mean, I try to get up in the morning and, you know, have some space for myself. You know, I'll go and I'll sit in my hot tub in the morning, I'll stretch, I'll go take a walk, you know. And if I can get a half hour, 45 minutes like that, it's a way for me to clear my head, you know, and really try to, you know, bring that into the day, you know. I also, you know, I eat really well, you know, and I think that's part of my balance, you know. I take time to cook, I take time to make food, and, you know, that's, you know, my family is, you know, we cook a lot, we eat together, not a lot, you know, if we get 2-3 meals a week together, that's a lot, you know, but it's special, you know, and, you know, so those are really just the moments that you have to, every day, just
stay on it, right?
Stay on it, man. It doesn't happen unless you do it.
Right, because I was thinking, you know, I have quite a few patients and people that work for me, but you guys both have me beat. You know, Brandon's probably got, 30 fighters, and how many employees?
Yeah. You know, hundreds.
Yeah.
And so you've got to balance all of those things along with your life, and you've got thousands of patients. And
yeah, and you
how
know,
many students do you guys,
there's, you know, between students and administration and faculty, we're up around 60 people.
Yeah,
you know,
so you guys are in charge of that many people and making sure that they stay motivated and happy. And wow,
that's it. They walk in, and you gotta, you know.
How do you compartmentalize that? Is there any way for you guys to not take that stress home and give it to your kids or your family, or, you know, or do you have any kind of secrets or tricks to that?
You know, I think going back to the gym's always really helped me break any of that. But I think as time goes on and I've become a better leader and a better administrator, I'm able to leave a lot of that at the door and then get back to it tomorrow. You know, I know a lot of these problems, big problems like opioid crisis, homelessness, overall economy in our city, you know, the growth of bonds and GRT. Like, I'm not going to fix it tonight.
Right.
But tomorrow I'm going to go back and take another little chip at it, and hopefully by the time I'm done, I'll have made a lasting difference for our community.
Right. And is the opioid, that's a pretty big deal right now with you guys, with the city?
I just think nationwide, you know, I think a lot of these problems, like just a government entity can't solve. It's going to take the whole community. It's going to take business owners and nonprofits and students and the best minds coming out. So I find that that's more and more of my job, is seeking out the best minds in our community and working together as a group, as a collaborative effort to see what difference we can make.
Yeah. And you guys are making a pretty big headway into this opioid issue too,
you know,
right?
It's important. You know, as you say, the insurance companies are a big part of it. Educating insurance companies that, you know, we can't just keep on treating pain with medicine. You know, you've got to use manual techniques that, you know, Dr. Hightower and I use and are trying to get out there. It's so important that we, you know, bring that to people. And see, that brings balance also, you know, I mean, to patients. You know, patients are so programmed to want to take something to feel better,
right.
You know, to re-educate them in a way of, you know, taking care of yourself. And, you know, I think a lot of what I do is, you know, educating patients in finding balance. That also helps remind me, you know, that's the daily struggle,
right.
You know, and, you know, I think it's just really important to connect with people and see, you know, see where they're at, you know. I mean, when my staff comes in, I mean, I'm checking in with people. I check in with students. I check in, you know, just to see where people are. And sometimes I don't like it, you know, sometimes
right.
they're upset with me. Sometimes, you know, you got to deal with that too. And, you know, I think it's just, you know, I've been a napropath for 36 years. You know, I've been practicing for 36 years. And I think just, you know, maturity, you kind of learn to leave things at the door, because you can't do anything at 2 o'clock in the morning except stay up and worry, you know.
Right.
So you've got to be able to put it away and come back at it fresh. So, yeah.
So it's interesting. So you're from Chicago originally. Brandon's a native New Mexican here. And he's had many offers to leave and go other places. So what is it about New Mexico in particular that has drawn both of you to one to come here and start here and live here and make this your home, and then also for Brandon to have all these opportunities to go other places, California, all these places, and then stay here? What is it about this community, this state, that has really drawn you to this location?
You know, I don't know how many generations deep on my mom's side, maybe 7 or 8 generations. So I take a lot of pride in being a New Mexican. I grew up in this community. I feel like this community invested in me. You know, I grew up in the war zone, and then to kind of like the lower northeast area. And I was a kid on social service programs, and I'm proud of it, you know, like, and with that said, I knew that when the time came, I was going to want to give back to my community as well. And that's what I've done. I've kind of, I've committed my life to social service. And I feel like through my day-to-day opportunities, I get to interact with so much of the community in every part of town. And it really makes me happy. And I have had offers to leave, to go to Texas, to go to California. But this is where my family is. This is where my roots are. And I couldn't imagine not waking up every day and seeing the Sandias or seeing the petroglyphs or seeing the Bosque. So this is home to me.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So when people ask me that question, what brought you to New Mexico, my stock answer is, well, have you looked out the window? I grew up in Chicago, and Chicago is a great place to be from. You know, it's a wonderful city. It's a loving city, but, you know, there's never any sunshine. You know, there's 96 blue sky days on average in Chicago, and there's always a cloud cover, and it's always damp and moist. And I always sought out the sun in the mountains. And there's a story, you know, why I'm here, and I mean, it goes into the school and into the profession. I don't know if you want to touch on that now or do it when we're talking about neuropathy.
Yeah, we'll jump into it in a little bit. But
yeah. But I mean, there's a reason that I'm here, and I didn't choose it. It kind of chose me, you know. And the doors open here in New Mexico for me, and you know, we've been able to, you know, make a really good life here. We have thousands and thousands of patients that we've touched up in Santa Fe and down here in Albuquerque, and you know, we've graduated, you know, 18 students already out of our school, and we've got another 23 students in the school. Awesome. You know, so it's, you know, we're just getting there, you know, and it's
now he's got the turquoise and everything.
Yeah,
you know,
we're getting the
Mexican now.
Zia's,
you know, we're getting to the place where, you know,
and Brandon has the Zia tattoo too.
Yeah, on the ring finger.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
I didn't do the tattoo yet, but
you gotta step up, man. He said yet. He said yet, folks. All right. So before Brandon takes off, I want you guys, I want to hear a couple stories. What are the most inspirational? Let's go back to the striking for Brandon on this one. Like, as a coach, what are some of the most inspirational moments that you've had as a coach? Some of the things that have been the coolest experiences you've had? And then what are a couple of the craziest ones? I'm going to kick it back to you. Same thing, working with pro athletes.
You know, one memory always super strikes out to me as a coach, and that was working with Tim Kennedy. And Tim was just somebody in the gym that I always looked up to. I admired him for his military service. I admired him for his entrepreneurship. I admired him for the work he puts in the dojo. And so I was able to work with Tim Kennedy and his fight against Rafael Natal at the Fight for the Troops that was at Fort Benning, Georgia, a base that Tim had been stationed at, you know, home of the 101st Airborne. And during that camp, Tim suffered a terrible injury to his hamstring, and it was bruised up and purple. And it was just inspiring to see Tim like, I'm going to get through this, and I'm going to do the game plan. I'm going to execute it, and we're going to get our victory no matter what, like at all costs, at all odds. And making that walk out there that night in a hangar, you know, the crowd was small, but compared to, you know, some of these big venues we've been to, but there was so much passion and so much pride and so much on the line. And Fort Benning was also a base that my father was stationed at before I was born. And so I just felt like a strong connection there, and knew that I'd never seen a fighter compete in front of their brothers. You know, I've seen people compete in their hometown,
Right.
but not in front of brothers in battle like that. And Tim was able to go out in the first round and kind of overcome adversity and find a big knockout that we've kind of named that technique after. It was just an amazing night to be a part of.
Nice.
And it was just so inspiring, something I'll never forget.
Nice. And what's your craziest fight week that you can talk about on air?
Goodness gracious. I'll tell you what, there's been a lot of times where I've been in a foreign country looking at the balance on my credit card, like, you know what, this airplane ticket is thousands of dollars to get back, short notice. Should I do it or should I stick this out? You know, like, how much more can I really take? So there's been a few of those where it just kind of comes down to, you know, personality. Like, I'm not going to click with every fighter. I may on a technical aspect, or I may on a personality aspect, but sometimes I have all the areas mesh and merge to make a great coach student athlete, it's not always there. And sometimes you don't know until they're deep into a weight cut, feeling like their back's against the wall, and you're the only person there for them to take it out on.
Wow.
And sometimes it's like, man, I got a day job. This isn't how I feed my kids. Like, I can
Sprain
get
your
on
ankle.
a plane and just be done with this. But every now and then, sometimes I'll call Coach Jackson, and he'll give me a pep talk like, hey, stay the course, get them through this, and especially when I was a younger coach, it was trying and difficult. So, I don't want to put any one fighter on blast, but I've definitely experienced some crazy, crazy fight weeks.
Right. And if you guys, I'm sure everybody who's tuned into this is probably, a familiar MMA fan, so they know Brandon. But for those that don't, I mean, this guy has cornered everybody great in the sport. Many, many champions. Carlos Condit, John Jones, John Dotson, everybody, Cub Swanson, Tim Kennedy. The list goes on and on and on. So there are so many world-class athletes that have put their trust in Brandon Gibson, and that says a lot.
It's a big responsibility, something, it takes so much work. And just like we were talking earlier about the day-in balance, it takes that day in and day out commitment and reaffirmation to help them achieve their greatest goal. Like, I can't take a day off and not watch tape or not show up and blow off the mitt workout for the night. Like, every day is a recommitment. Like, Saturday night, John Jones just won a world title. Monday, I was in
Yeah,
here
you were
helping.
in here. I saw you right away.
Yeah,
No
like
days off.
helping the next group achieve their dreams, because that young kid whose fight is coming up, that fight is just as important to him as John Jones's fight on Saturday night was to him.
Yeah.
So we want to do everything in this gym just to stay disciplined, stay focused, and keep continuing to help people achieve their dreams.
And how many world titles is that now?
That was 14 for John.
Woo!
Yeah.
Woo!
So, definitely.
It's a lot of gold, folks. That's
And
a
I
lot
will
of
say,
gold.
like, being part of greatness like that, seeing John's focus throughout an entire camp and just his commitment to himself and his team and his goal, it carries over into other aspects of my life. Like, whether that's me helping that young kid that's just starting off, or whether that's me Monday morning showing up to my government job with that same focus. Maybe not that same intensity, but like, this is what it's going to take us as a team to achieve our greatness and our goals.
Right. That's awesome. So you guys have both worked with the greatest now. We got Walter Payton, John Jones.
Working with Walter was, I was just thinking about some of these experiences with him.
You've had tons of Major League Baseball players and
Yeah,
NFL guys and
I worked more,
basketball too?
Well, no, mostly baseball.
Baseball,
I
okay.
didn't. Walter was really the only football player I worked with.
And how did you guys meet?
Well, we worked at a club. I was working at a club while I was in naturopath school doing massage.
What kind of club? Are we allowed
No,
to
it
ask
was
that
a,
question?
it was it was a workout club. It was called the Charlie Club
Gotcha.
outside of Chicago.
I got some lyrics.
Yeah, and
Running the ball is like making romance. That was from the.
there you go. That's from the Super Bowl shuffle.
Ooh, the sweetness.
Sweetness. But I was doing massage there, and I worked out there. So I was working out, and I had a pair of boots, inversion boots. And I was hanging
The old
from one of
school,
the apparatus. Yeah, they only had boots at the time.
Right. You
So
were doing the Count Dracula thing. and
I was hanging and I was stretching, and all of a sudden I seen this guy just looking at me, and I said, "That's Walter Payton," And he said, "Can I try that?" And I said, "Well, absolutely, you could try that." So I hung them, and I would do this with my patients. I would start treating as they were upside down, because you're getting the gravity, the decompression. So I started working on him, and
Wow.
that's how it happened. He said, "Man, how do we get some more of that?" And I said, "Well, I gave him my card, and he started coming into the."
So you didn't give me your cell phone number, right? Because
I didn't have a cell phone then, and the cell phone we got was a brick.
You need a backpack for it.
Exactly, because that was back in it was 1980.
Nice.
So I started going to his house, and I worked
Give
on
him
him.
your pager numbers in.
There you go. So we got to be really good buddies,
Nice.
And I've took him, he would wake up on a Monday morning, and I'd get the phone call, and go there and work on him, and just work those bruises out and get that inflation down, and
And he was known for his durability too.
He was the
300-something
most
carries.
amazing specimen I've ever touched. I mean, it was almost like somebody took a chunk of granite and chiseled this man, and he was as flexible a man that I ever met as well. He would just do the full out splits. Strong. But, just working in that experience, it was good. And, I've had some, it's kind of hard to work with athletes,
Sure.
right?
Kind of prima donnas,
well,
right?
not only that, but, you're working on them to get them back in to beat themselves up.
True.
So you're kind of enabling them to keep on going out there and beating themselves up, So it's, I struggled with that for a while, I mean, how much do you want to work and get these guys well to go and perform, and then they hurt themselves again,
Right.
But that was always the struggle for me, when I was working in the training rooms, Herm Schneider, the trainer of the White Sox, and I have been friends for 30 plus years. And so I would go down to the spring trainings, down in Florida.
You still go down to like Florida and Arizona?
I haven't gone in a while. 2 years ago, I went and visited Herm, but that was the first time in a while.
So
but
White
I
Sox
stopped.
your favorite team?
Well, I grew up around the White Sox, so I was a White Sox fan from Chicago.
So you don't like the Cubs?
I like the Cubs, but I like the White Sox a lot better.
Can you like both?
Well, yeah, I did it because I'd work on some of them too. But yeah, it's it's just it was a fun kind of a place to be in. And actually, Herm is going to in their 2020 budget, they have added space for a naturopath to be on the
Nice.
team. So I think that's going to be.
So you're going to send somebody?
I am.
Nice.
Yeah, I am.
I like
am.
it.
I am. Yeah. So we're working on that right now.
Spreading the gospel.
There we
Spreading the
go.
gospel,
Medicine.
man. That's we're trying to get it out there.
Love it.
I like it. So what about the crazy one? You said, he told you he gets caught in Brazil and other countries. What do you got? You ever been stuck in Rio?
Never been
With no
stuck.
money in your account?
Yeah. I don't. Nothing was really coming up crazy. I mean, I think it's just it was the personal struggle
Okay.
that I had. Wondering if this is the right thing to do.
Right.
And really, I moved away from doing sports. And
Well, being in Santa Fe will do that for you,
well,
too.
I mean, once I came,
Yeah.
and because what brought me to Santa Fe, was totally different than sports.
Right.
I
Different
came here to bring
market,
I mean, and that's the story. What brought me here? I moved to New Mexico to open a retreat center. My practice back in Illinois, when I started moving away from sports, was working on adult survivors of childhood trauma,
Wow.
physical, emotional, sexual abuse. And I was working on people, who experienced this pain, and weren't getting it validated. So I bought a retreat center outside of Silver City, New Mexico, in the Gila National Forest back in 1999. I opened it up. And, I was bringing groups in once a month from Chicago. And the week I was coming back and forth from Chicago to New Mexico every other week. And the weeks that I wasn't bringing a group in, I'd see patients. And patients would travel in to see me, or I'd start seeing local people. And it was June of 1999, okay? I got a phone call from this guy who introduced himself to me as Benny. He said, "My name is Benny. I broke my neck in a car accident. I've been everywhere. I heard you can help me." All right, so I scheduled an appointment with this gentleman, walked in my office, I think it was, the following week. Beautiful New Mexican man, unassuming guy, started working on him. After about 3 months, he was off of his pain medication. His range of motion was gained about 70%. He was sleeping through the night. He walked in my office one day, this day, and he looked me in the eyes and says, "Doc," he says, "I think we need to get you licensed here in New Mexico." I thought, what the hell is this guy talking about, right? Well, it turned out to be Senator Ben Altamirano, right?
Wow.
And he was the president pro tem of the Senate here in New Mexico. And in January of that year, we introduced the Naturopathic Practice Act. So in January of 2000, we introduced the Naturopathic Practice Act. I would come up to his office here in Santa Fe, or up in Santa Fe. I'd set up my table in his office, and I started treating all the legislators, right? Well, it took us 4 years to get the bill passed. So we went from 2000 to 2004, and we got that bill passed. Richardson signed the bill into law, the Naturopathic Practice Act. And Benny told me, he says, "Look, you need to bring a school here. We got to spread this." So I was dumb enough to tell him I would do it. I got a license for the school in 2006. It took me 4 years to get it open. We opened it in 2010. We graduated our first class in 2014, and we've been on the process of earning accreditation for this school. We'll be the first school in the world that's accredited to do naturopathic manual medicine, and that opens the door to bring it to all 50 states. So, New Mexico, I chose to come to New Mexico, but I came to New Mexico not to do naturopathic medicine. I came to New Mexico to treat survivors of, childhood trauma.
Sure.
And the doors just opened. And,
Life takes crazy turns, right?
Life takes crazy turns. So.
Brandon, how did you end up meeting Greg Jackson?
Man, I originally started doing martial arts when I was 6 years old. I went to Emerson Elementary. That's off Trumbull in Louisiana.
Okay.
I would walk to my grandma's house. I was just a little boy. I was second grade, first grade, second grade. And I was getting picked on and bullied. And my dad said hey, we're not moving neighborhoods. I still got to work. So instead of walking to your grandma's, you're going to walk to this karate dojo. And so I'd bring a gi with me every day. And I'd get out of school and I'd go to the dojo. And so from a very young age, I was a disciplined martial artist. And when I got to my teenage years, I got a little disillusioned with karate, and I really wanted to learn how to box. My parents said, there's no money for boxing lessons, but there's a free city community center in San Jose, Jack Kendall area, and so I would take the bus there a few times a week. And in there was just old boxing coaches that would help me and teach me things and throw me in spar against their guys, and I loved it. And then I was boxing at a police athletic league gym. Met this trainer named Hein, and Hein was like, hey, I'm going to start working at this LA boxing gym. You should come and do privates with me over there, and I'll start teaching you some Dutch kickboxing. You have good karate, you have good boxing. So I went in there, and I was just lighting everybody up. I thought I was a badass. I was 21. And Hein said, hey, you're not that good. If you think you're that good, come to Winklejohn's gym. And so when I was 21, which is 16 years ago, I walked into Winklejohn's gym. There was
so you met Mike first.
I was at Winklejohn's gym first, and there was maybe 5-6 people in the gym. Holly, Joey, Keith, Mike Van Arsdale, Damasio, Diego would kind of be in and out. And I just bit down and started throwing with them, and I just loved Wink's coaching style. I loved the training partners. I was definitely humbled on the daily.
It was a little harder than where you were.
Yeah. And I just knew I wanted to start doing MMA style striking and kickboxing, and so I met Greg through there. Greg would come in and watch the guys spar at night, and 2-3 years later, after that point, they wanted to merge gyms. It was actually really nice because I worked very close to the Acoma location at the time. I worked at Highland High School.
Okay.
And so I was just able to continue to keep evolving as a martial artist under Greg and Wink and all these amazing
And you're a
teammates.
Highland High grad too, right?
Sandia, but
Sandia,
I
okay.
grew up in the
Sandia.
Highland neighborhood
Gotcha.
for sure.
Okay, nice. It's Matador. Man. Well, make sure, Six Gun Gibson on Instagram, Twitter, make sure you go give him a follow, give him some love, tell him you saw this story. And make sure you guys are checking everybody out as they go along in the gym here. This guy, he's got a lot of years left under his belt. He may get too big for our britches here. We may see him at the top of the city government. Both these gentlemen, it wouldn't surprise me if either one of them ended up being, mayor, governor, one of those kind of things. But man, it was awesome that you came in. And
Yeah, thanks for having
And
me.
he's
It was
very
a
active
pleasure,
on,
man. Thank you for all the
on
work.
social media. He'll respond to you.
Thank you for
he will
spreading
respond
this,
to you.
man.
Buy some Six Gun
I
Gibson
will.
shirts.
Oh, who's this gorgeous girl on the cover?
Somebody whom we won't name.
Some lucky guy somewhere.
Some lucky guy somewhere. And Brandon, by the way, already bought one of the books, so make sure you guys grab one too. Make sure
Yeah.
do you guys still have the Six Gun Gibson shirts?
Every now and then I'll
Slanging
put out
them?
a special
Okay.
release.
Okay,
So
we'll
keep
get
an eye
a
on
clamoring
Instagram.
going for him again.
Yeah,
Keep
a
an
little
eye
special
out.
color one off.
So keep bugging him on Instagram. Tell him you want some of those new Six Gun shirts. Maybe they'll even come out with a new design.
Yeah,
14
you never
belts.
know. You
Maybe
never know.
maybe start
Rubies.
an Instagram poll. Should
Hey,
Should I do?
Yeah. Do we need a new
Yeah,
Six Gun
that's the
design?
new thing, right?
That's right.
New Six Gun things.
I appreciate you, brother.
Guys,
Cool.
have a good night.
All right. So let's so naproapathy. So a lot of people are always asking me on my social media, what is naproapathy and where does it come from? And I always, when people ask me, I said, you got to go talk to Dr. Nuzzo. He is the second founder, essentially. This profession that was started by Oakley Smith has sort of disappeared and languished, and you're sort of the person resurrecting it, and we're building it, and you're growing it, and
Yeah.
So tell us about that journey and what exactly happened, where these other professions sort of took off, and naproapathy sort of like took a pause, and what you're doing now to be able to bring it back to the forefront. with the advantages that it has.
Yeah, well, naturopathic medicine, started right alongside chiropractic. Oakley Smith was with D.D. Palmer back in Davenport, Iowa. Actually, Dr. Stills was there as well. So manual medicine really got its start in America back in the early 1900s in Davenport, Iowa. So Oakley and D.D. Palmer were together formulating chiropractic at the time. And Oakley was a medical pathologist. And Oakley was brilliant, but he was socially inept. Okay, he was just a genius that couldn't get along with a soul, and that's what I really believe slowed this profession from growing. Okay, at one time, and I'll kind of bounce around here a little bit, but back in the 40s, there was 7 schools back all around the Midwest. It was in Illinois, it was in Missouri, it was in Iowa, it was in Wisconsin. And the story goes that, back in the 40s, the AMA, which was based in Chicago, came to Oakley. And this was before physical therapy, and they were interested in how do we do some rehabilitation. And they were leery of chiropractic because they didn't believe in the high velocity adjusting. They thought that was a little bit, dangerous.
Well, some of the theories too, right?
Yeah, some of the theories as well.
And this is around the Flexner Report time.
Exactly. So they went to Oakley, and Oakley. In his in his inherent wisdom, angered them so much by the way he reacted to them that they basically went after him, and they closed everything down except the one school that still is running back in Chicago. That's the school I graduated from. So the profession
were there several schools before that?
There was, that was the original.
Okay.
But then he started branching schools. He opened a school in Missouri, he opened a school in Iowa, he opened a school in Ohio, Wisconsin. There was schools all around the Midwest. So there was lots of naturopaths that were flourishing and, working out of their homes and clinics all over the Midwest. But when the AMA and Oakley clashed, they came and, just really tried, they shut them down, there wasn't licensing or anything back then. So I think that, the people that ran the school, that Oakley ran the school until the 70s when he passed away. Wow. Yeah. And then the guy who took over.
So he would have been, what, 90
he was in his late 80s. Yeah, he was in his late 80s. He passed away, and then, the people that ran the school just never really had the vision, and they were socially inept like Oakley was. So the profession never grew. And again, I never dreamed of bringing naturopathy, out there and making this bringing it back. I mean,
what got you into it? What made you want to be a naturopath?
My uncle was a naturopath. Okay. My uncle studied with Oakley Smith. So the only doctor I ever knew as a kid was him. If I didn't feel good, I'd get a treatment. I didn't know to go. I've only taken medication one time in my life.
Wow.
And it was because I cracked a tooth and it got infected. And they convinced me I needed to take, an antibiotic in order for me not to lose the tooth and stuff because I had a roaring infection. But that's the only medication I've ever taken in my life. So my uncle was my idol. He didn't have any children. I just watched this guy healing people all day long. He had this office on the south side of Chicago, and there'd be people lined up down the street waiting to see him because he wouldn't take appointments, and they'd just come in, and if they had money, he'd take it, and if they didn't, he wouldn't. He was just a healer, and I just kind of followed him, and really I went back in 1980, I was accepted to the National College of Chiropractic back in Lombard, Illinois.
Okay.
And I went to the orientation, and I was so dejected and just, I didn't like what I saw. Everybody that was in the class were people that couldn't get into medical school, and they settled for chiropractic. I didn't see anybody there that was really on fire for chiropractic. Sure. So my uncle had passed away. My aunt was still living, and I went back, and I said, she was going to help pay for my school,
Right.
And I told her, I said, it doesn't feel right. I don't think I can go there. And she said, well, why don't you go to the naturopath school? And I thought, the naturopath school? I didn't even think about that, So the next day I went down to the naturopath because it was right at the start of the school year. I interviewed. I met with the people there, and I started classes the next week. So I love the profession. I love touching people. I love helping people, and we're just in a place now where we can take this profession really nationally
Sure.
in a short time. Now actually naturopathic medicine is more popular in Europe right now than it is in America.
Sweden primarily, right?
Sweden, because somebody pretty much did what I did, right?
Yeah.
A student came in, Bjorn Borg, went through the school just before I graduated. He graduated
Not the
in
tennis player.
78. No, not the tennis player. But every tennis, all the tennis pros back in Sweden have team naturopaths.
Yeah.
Just like the Olympic hockey teams, all that, they all have naturopaths as their team docs there.
Interestingly, I just shot a commercial with Volvo, and Volvo is based out of Sweden, so they had a lot of their people here, and so they were very familiar with it. Like, oh, napravit is what
Napravit.
is what they call it. But
Yeah.
like a lot of them had a provider over there, which was super interesting because until we met, I didn't really know much about it.
Right.
And what does the word mean? So a lot of the words like chiropractic means done by hand, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about what
Yeah,
napropath means.
it comes from the Czechoslovakian word napravit,
Okay.
right? And it's to mend, to heal, to
And
work
is that
with
because
the hands.
Oakley was Czech or
No,
like
no,
how
no.
did-
Oakley wasn't Czech. The story with him is that he had scarlet fever as a child.
Wow.
Okay, and he was a very tall man. He was about
For
6'3".
you guys listening, that doesn't mean that you're into redheads. It's actually a pathological condition.
Yeah. Yes. So he had scarlet fever as a young man, and his family they had means. They're a wealthy family.
Yeah.
So they would take him all over the world to try and find some cures, where he can, start to function again. So they went all over Europe. I mean, they exhausted America. They didn't get the help they needed here. And they were in Czechoslovakia tracking down some healers in Czechoslovakia called the napravits. They would rub the pain out.
Okay.
So he got so
I got
much
that
help.
name from
Yeah, exactly.
the body workers out there.
Exactly. They would rub the pain out. And he went there and got his mobility back in his leg and his arm, and got really interested in pathology, and he was a pathologist, and he started the profession. He went and sought out D.D. Palmer, and D.D. Palmer actually brought him in to prove the subluxation theory, okay? And he actually disproved the subluxation theory. He didn't, because he was doing, dissection on cadavers,
Sure.
and he would see that there'd be micro tears along the ligaments of the spine.
Right.
And he says, what? I mean, micro tears, these ligaments tear. So he just tried to speak with D.D. Palmer and said, look, we can't just keep adjusting the bony structure without treating the tissue that's pulling this bony structure out of alignment. So, Oakley just kind of, pulled the body apart to see how fascia was pulling on the bony structure and how fascia was, pulling bony structure out of alignment. And just by getting on the bony structure and pushing it back in and not treating what's pulling it out didn't make any sense. So they clashed. They clashed big time,
Right.
And they
And
went their
obviously by
separate ways.
treating the fascia and those things, he had longer term outcomes.
He had
right?
longer term outcomes, and he really believed that you didn't have to take any medicine. This is what got him in trouble with the AMA. He said, we don't need drugs, we don't need surgeries. All we need is naturopathic medicine. So he was a heretic. you
Right.
know.
Well, and the truth is always somewhere in the middle, right? We're
Yeah.
clearly over medicalized nowadays. Not everybody needs to be on medication.
Right.
And I think people end up treating labs instead of treating people. And I think, bringing it back and bringing some of the older school ideas is a nice balance. That
Yeah.
there is a way to treat things by being focused on wellness, like you talked about previously. Nutrition and movement and getting body work done. That's really crucial.
Getting body work done, like I said before, you got to feel good to feel good.
Right.
So it's a mindset. But this profession, it can touch the world. And that's basically what it does. It's really the best of chiropractic and physical therapy and massage. It's all kind of rolled into one.
And so a lot of people ask that question. They say, what's the difference between those three professions?
Well, naturopathic and chiropractic align up very, very well. Our education, as you know, our philosophy, as you know, is very similar. Okay, massage has got a good idea. You're working the muscles, you're working the spasms, right? If you go in, you have a spasm in your neck or spasm in your shoulder. A massage therapist will go in there. You could rub it out, right?
But they just maybe lack like the doctoral level education. Is that sort of?
They do that, but here's the thing. They don't go back to the spine to correct the imbalance in the
take care of
spine
both parts of it.
that creates the spasm in the first place.
Okay, that makes
And
sense.
so the chiropractor will go just do the spine, right? And they'll bring it into alignment, but they didn't take care of the
neglect
tissue,
the tissue,
that was spasming.
and so that it goes back.
So
and pulls it
napropaths,
back out.
exactly. Napropaths work through the muscle into the connective tissue to affect the bony structure. So you're bringing all three of those, or two of those, into unison.
Right.
So we
Which
focus.
makes the most sense, right?
It makes the most sense. People get results. I mean, you see it. I mean,
absolutely.
you see it. You treat it, and I believe you're using your tools to align. Alignment is incredibly important, but that alignment wouldn't stay if you didn't have your guys doing the soft tissue on them.
Right.
That's what makes the difference.
Sure.
I mean, I tell people, they come in if they're hurting, they have neck pain, they have back pain. I want 3 treatments. I want once a week for 3 weeks, and the first treatment, they'll get a little bit of a relief, but it might last a day or two because, muscle memory and posture and, everything brings things back out of alignment. So you really got to do neuromuscular re-education. You got to get into that tissue and get that tissue to relax in order for the bony structure to hold into place. So, as a napropath, I mean, you remember this, Oakley's biggest I think accomplishment is chartology and chartosis, the charting of the spine and the marking of the spine. So we are able to train our doctors by taking palpations and charting on the chartabar, where those vertebrae lay and how those vertebrae are out of alignment,
Sure.
and we can see it on a chart and design a treatment to help them to bring that bony structure into alignment. But you've got to address the soft tissue in order to bring alignment and keep alignment. So if I treat somebody once a week for 3 weeks, after that second treatment, I've got that tissue a little softer. I'm getting back into the ligaments on the bony structure where that adjustment will start to hold. By the third one, I've softened up that tissue enough to where that bony structure will start to hold.
Sure.
So you really got to do re-education in the neuromuscular system.
And so how does that compare or align with physical therapy? Because the question that I'll get asked a lot of times by people is why. So tell me about the different professions and schools and what makes one either better or more affordable or a better use of their time or any of those kind of things relative to each other. Because there's a lot of kids out there probably even watching that are considering naturopathic school, chiropractic school, physical therapy school.
Yeah.
What do you think the difference is, and what do you think that your school has as far as an advantage over UNM School of Physical Therapy or Parker or Palmer Chiropractic? Like, what are some of the things that you think set you apart in your school and Southwest University of Naturopathic Medicine apart?
Well, again, the philosophy and the treatment style of naturopathic medicine really takes into account the whole body.
And is that a time thing, or is that just? Do you think that's part of it? Because I know I've had people say they go to the chiropractor and they only get like 3 minutes with them.
Yeah. Well, I think it is the time thing. You got to spend time on the tissue to soften it up so you could bring alignment. You got to get those muscles to relax and that spasm to relax for you to get back to that spinal column and bring it back into alignment.
And that takes at least 15 minutes?
Yeah, probably 10 to 12 to 15 minutes. We do our sessions are 30 minutes, right? 25 minutes. We book a 30-minute session. They're getting a treatment for 30 minutes. They transition in 5 minutes. So we always do a full body treatment. Always.
Okay.
Concentrate on the areas of complaint.
Sure.
Because if somebody has a spasm in the shoulder, connective tissue and fascia goes everywhere. Fascia is in between every layer of muscle, covers every bony structure, covers every organ. And as you know, fascia should be viscous. It's gooey in nature. So when you're turning your head or you're moving your shoulder, those muscles should glide over each other, right? So when that tissue dries out, right, it forms a knot, right? And feel knots all over the place. So it forms a knot. So when you're turning your neck, the muscles aren't rolling. It's like acting like a fulcrum, and it's pulling bony structure out of alignment, right?
Yeah.
So we got to go into those areas of max tension, right? The students are taught to find and identify max tension, treat into the max tension, bring it back to the spinal column, and make the adjustment, right? So we're teaching specific that nobody else teaches, right? Adjustments that you could measure, by doing the chartology and the chardosis and marking that spine, marking it, doing the treatment, going back, taking findings again, and you can actually see the differences, right? I mean, remember in the classes?
Yeah, absolutely.
We showed how this is done, and it works. It makes sense.
And you've had some injuries lately, right?
Oh man, I did, and you've helped me with those injuries. Yeah, I slipped on it. It's almost 2.5 years ago. It's coming back. I ripped my supraspinatus and infraspinatus fully. I ripped my bicep tendon partially and a labrum partially, and I was looking at surgery.
And you didn't have surgery?
I did not have surgery.
Oh, wow.
I did. Well, you were the first person I saw.
Right.
My wife is a napropath, Kirsten. She worked on me first because I was in so much pain.
Sure.
But then you did the adjustment in the class that night and put it back into alignment, right? And then I started stem cell therapy.
Right.
I did 3 rounds of stem cell therapy.
In conjunction while you were getting naprapathic at the school?
I got naprapathic treatments.
The whole way through?
The whole way through.
Right.
I did about 117 naprapathic treatments, during the year I was healing, and I did.
And you never took really time off from treating either, right?
I did not. I cut way back.
Okay.
I had to cut way back because I could only push down.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to do any kind of stretches.
With
but
three,
I would,
3 rotator cuff tears and a bicep tear.
Exactly. So I was able to, instead of doing 40 or 50 a week, I was doing, 10 to 15 a week, for the first 4, 5, 6 months.
Right.
And then I, slowly, but now my strength is back. My range of motion is actually better now than it was prior to the injury.
Because you were sort of neglecting it.
I was neglecting it, and there was an old injury there. I had shoulder surgery back when I was in my 20s from a shoulder separation. So when he went in and did the stem cells, he also did what he called scar releases. He went and injected stem cells.
Yeah.
Exactly. He broke up all the scar tissue.
Oh.
So I believe in.
So that's that melding of and to me those are natural therapies. It's not drugs. Like those are.
It's not. He used my stem cells.
Right.
And it was an old osteopath.
Right.
I found an old osteopath who's retired now, I'm sad to say, up in Santa Fe, and he was an orthopedic osteopath. He did surgery for 42 years.
Wow.
And Dr. Baum is his name, James Baum.
Right. He's the bomb.
Baum, yeah. And
James Baum.
he grew up in a family. His father and uncle were both osteopaths.
Okay.
And they were the first guys to do prolotherapy.
Wow.
So they developed prolotherapy. So, I feel like...
as technology gets better and they get more understanding of those cells, all those things really blend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously I have a chiropractic education and a naturopathic education now. But a lot of people kind of question what happened with these professions to make them, alternative or complementary. And I kind of give the backstory. So, back in the 1860s, so A.T. Still was a Civil War surgeon. He was a medical doctor. But at the time, there really wasn't any kind of real medication. There were, we didn't have penicillin formally until about 1942,
right,
of commercially available. So before then, what kind of medicine were people using? Arsenic, castor oil, and a lot of amputations.
Yeah.
And he
cocaine.
was cocaine. Yeah, absolutely, cocaine.
Yeah.
A lot of crazy. Really, what we'd call drugs these days.
Yeah.
Mercury. So it was more voodoo.
Chloroform.
Yeah. A lot of voodoo medicine, really, and those are medical doctors at the time.
Right.
So there was no medicine. So unsurprisingly, people were looking for alternative forms of that, and he was really one of the first ones to come up with an idea that is ancient, though. When we talk about bone setters,
right?
Hippocrates was a bone setter,
right?
There were many Middle Eastern bone setters. So that idea is as old as time. It's the scientific advancements that are catching up with that are making such a big deal,
right?
And he started to put together the ideas of osteopathy, and there are writings of D.D. Palmer having visited and spoken about osteopathy in his writings. So
right.
this is all sort of off the same branch with all 3 different philosophies. Osteopaths believing in neurovascular compression, chiropractors believing in neural subluxation causing compression, and obviously naturopaths believing in the ligamentites,
neurovascular
and
bundle flow, right?
But from the ligaments more so as opposed to the bony
exactly
structure. And
right.
so they're all off the same branch. And so what he was discussing is the AMA, who has been very, very combative historically to all these professions. Now the Medical Association in New Mexico has been awesome, right? In fact,
correct.
naturopaths are actually under the medical board.
We're licensed and regulated by the New Mexico
the medical board. So these people have medical licenses essentially. Where if you're looking at say chiropractic or acupuncture, they have their own boards. They're not actually in conjunction with a medical board.
Correct.
So we have a very progressive medical board here, which has been really cool working with them, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're responsible for creating those sort of networks and relationships, and for that we're really grateful. But going back to the 40s, the Flexner report, at the advent, really there is no medicine before antibiotics at all.
Right.
That's kind of
the medicine was manual medicine. Right. I mean,
which worked better, but that obviously than mercury.
Yeah.
So it's so they were actually crushing the medical doctors at the time, obviously. So now we're talking about market competition. So when they started. They formed their panel on quackery. They were intent, and I believe they made offers to all three professions if they wanted to join, or they would be eliminated.
Right.
And the osteopaths were the only ones that took the offer and said that we'll join along with you, and that's why they're essentially physicians at this point.
I didn't realize that. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yep. They came to all three branches and like you said, made sort of an offer that, listen, you stop being your own thing, you're going to join our organizations, and we won't eliminate you. And that's why DOs exist to this day, because most DOs that function as medical doctors.
Exactly.
They don't even barely teach the osteopathic techniques anymore, which is sad because I know a lot of DO students, and they're really there's a lot of them that want to learn manual therapy, and it's just not there in the curriculum.
It's not there, and that's all we're doing. I want to stay true to the manual therapies. As a matter of fact, I'm going to kind of plug the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
We wrote a book, Naturopathic or Naturopathy Manual Medicine for the 21st Century, and it's really about bringing back the ancient arts. I mean, this was the first type of work. If somebody was hurting, they would rub them out. And we wrote the book to try and bring the education to to the population. You don't always need to go get drugs and surgery.
Right.
There's another way. And actually, this
despite
should be
what
the
every
first
commercial
way.
tells you.
Ask
your doctor if blah 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 is right for you. Ask your doctor if
this is the first way. I mean, people.
It should be ask your doctor if naturopathy is right for you.
Exactly, or manual medicine is right for you, because it's and we're seeing more and more of it. Since my office, as you know, in school is right across the street from the hospital up in Santa Fe, St. Vincent's Hospital, and we are getting so many referrals from docs now who
because of the results.
There's people are coming, people are getting treatments, and they're going back to their doctors and telling them, and we're just
I don't need to be on these opioids anymore.
I don't need to be taking this stuff. I feel so much better. I've gotten a couple, 2-3 treatments, and my range of motion is better. I don't have to, limp around here anymore.
And they're not hooked on opiates.
And they're not hooked on opioids, and that's the big thing.
Yeah,
and
that's huge.
And being on the medical board has really, really helped us. And that's a story too, because when we first got licensed here, we were administratively attached to the licensing and regulation. So we had a very small board that was, we were the first new board in New Mexico in over 20 years.
Wow.
So nobody working at licensing and regulation even knew about how to put a board together.
Sure.
So we kind of walked through it together. And after 7 years, we sunsetted, right? Every 7 years, a board sunsets in New Mexico. So the board came to me and said, look, Dr. Nuzzo, there's only 13, licenses here. We've got to consolidate, we can't just run this board on its own. You've got to kind of, either go with the chiropractors or go with the acupuncturists. And I said, they don't go along with each other, right now. So it's going to be kind of hard for us to do that with them. And I said, what are my other choices, And she says, well, ultimately, we'd like to have everybody under the medical board. And I said, well, let's go talk with them, So I went and sat down, and it was a medical board meeting. And I was on the agenda. And the first question that was asked to me is, do you want to expand your scope of practice? And I said, no, I just want to maximize what we do. We're manual therapists. I just want to treat, with my hands, because everybody wants to chiropractors are prescribing drugs now, acupuncturists prescribing drugs now. They don't want that to, to continue to happen. So, they opened arms to me, and we've been licensed and regulated by them now since 2011.
Oh, that's amazing.
And, when the docs find out, and the docs know about it, so they're feeling like, we're part of it. And as we go state by state, which we will be going state by state,
Sure.
I suggest that we get licensed under the medical boards.
Right.
Because
so for people calling it like woo-woo or whatever, obviously the medical doctors see enough value into it to put it under their board of medicine, right?
Exactly.
So that on its own speaks volumes.
So it's credibility. And as I go into other states, and
if they didn't, they wouldn't have it under their board if it wasn't worth anything,
exactly.
right? Or if it was unscientific, or
yeah.
Some of the other claims that people out there that are just sort of like anti want to make.
Yep.
Obviously, the medical board speaks very highly, and they wouldn't do this if they didn't believe in the science and the results.
It's the truth,
and the safety too.
And the safety, and that's it. We treat with a lot of care, and I see this profession, just really moving forward now in the next 10 years. We should, be able to, next year in 2020, we're going to branch this school back into Chicago.
Right.
And then we're going to start going state by state, as an organization to move this profession forward.
So what's the process for potential students that want to get in? They have to have what kind of credentials, and then how do they get a hold of you? How do they send in their applications? Because I know there's a ton of people out there that I see that are like, man, I want to do what you guys do. I want to be able to change people's lives and help people.
Yeah.
How do they get started on that path to become a naturopath?
Yeah. Well, the school is in Chicago, Chicago. It's going to be in Chicago. School's up in Santa Fe. 75% of our program is online, though. Okay. You do have to still come to school, though. You have to come to school for the hands-on portion.
But that flexibility, is that something people really appreciate? Is that
something
you
people really, really appreciate? And now in 2020, we're going to do our classes instead of nighttime classes. We're going to do our classes on Saturdays.
Okay.
And we've got our hands-on classes down to 2-hour classes. So they'll do online assignments and studies and homeworks and stuff, and then they'll come into the clinic, into the school classroom for 2 hours for those classes. So a lot
of folks can still work part-time.
They could still work. It's kind of hard to work full-time with this because it's very, very
it's
taxing. It's a very demanding program.
But at least they can kind of offset the costs somewhat while they're in school.
And I do have some people.
A lot of folks have families, right? Do you get a lot of people that's second career?
There's most of our people are second career. We're starting to get in some younger ones right out of college now.
Okay.
But that won't really happen until we earn the accreditation, and there's a way for them to get financial aid. So people are still, kind of paying out of their pockets. They're paying as they go along.
But it's super affordable, I've heard, compared to the chiropractic schools.
Our 3-year program.
Right.
It's a 4-year program condensed into 3. So we're on a quarter basis. It's 4 quarters a year for 3 years. The first 2 years, 8 quarters, there are in 5 of the 8 quarters, there's 2 classrooms a week. In 3 of the 8 quarters, there's 3 classrooms a week. So traditionally, or since we started, they were either come to school 2 or 3 nights a week.
Okay.
Starting in 2020, they're going to come just on Saturday for either 4 or 6 hours, depending upon what quarter it is.
Sure.
So it's going to be
the cost of living is super cheap in New Mexico too, which is kind of important.
It's better, and the cost of my program right now is $55,150.
So I've got a couple of friends that are physical therapists, and one of them said it was $150,000 for his program, not including living expenses.
Right.
Living in New York or LA, like one of the USC guys said he had $160,000 just in tuition, so it ended up being like $250,000 in total debt.
Well, we have a chiropractor who's in our program right now, the second chiropractor coming through our program, and he signed up. He's in the class, but he's carrying $140,000 student loan from his chiropractic.
Wow, it's $120,000.
$120. He's got some left over from his bachelor's.
Oh wow, and that's just tuition, right?
That was just tuition. That wasn't his cost of living. So
that's
we
crippling.
are affordable.
So I mean, if you can get out for less than $100,000, I mean that's a steal for a doctorate degree.
And we're again licensed and regulated by the medical board. Every major insurance company in New Mexico covers us.
Right.
All the big ones cover us. Great benefits from all the big employers, the state of New Mexico, Sandia Labs.
And you work with big
Los
organizations
Alamos
too,
Labs.
obviously.
Yeah. So we're, we have not enough naprapaths to see all the demand.
I've heard that.
Not enough naprapaths to see the demand. So, again, so if somebody wants to, get involved, if you want to know more about the program, actually, the book is on Amazon. It really gives you a great background.
Make sure to go buy it with your money.
Nephropathy, Manual Medicine for the 21st Century. It's a good way to, kind of get an introduction to what we're doing. The website, sunmedu.com is our website. You can go on there. All the school catalog is on there. All the information for the school is on there. Give the school a call, 505-467-8777. Speak with somebody there about what the process is. You do need a bachelor's degree to get into the program, okay?
Does it matter what the major is?
Yeah, I mean, it does matter what the major is. I mean, we're getting more and more and more stringent as we get closer to earning the accreditation. So it's best to come out with some kind of a science. So exercise science is a great one. Pre-med obviously is
I've heard
really
athletic
good.
training is a
Athletic
great
trainer
major.
is absolutely a great one because
to lead you into the program because you've already got clinical experience
and we're doing a lot of physical rehab and exercise rehab. So physical training and exercise science are the two best to come out of.
Well, and that's what all the evidence shows too, is the combination of manual therapy and corrective exercise gives by far the best outcomes out of anything.
Exactly.
You can't just do exercise if your bones don't move in the right position or your muscles are locked up.
Exactly.
You can't just move your way out of it. You don't think that people thought that? They're like, oh, let me just move it because it hurts.
They try, and then remember we talked about how that fascia dries, right? If they move too much, right, it's acting like a fulcrum. It's pulling that bony structure more out of alignment,
right,
impeding the nerve, creating inflammation, creating pain.
Sure.
So movement, people get stiff and sore. That's the other thing. One of the easiest tips that we can give anybody is drink water.
Right.
You got to drink water because if you don't drink water, the fascia doesn't get the lubricating material it needs to stay viscous. So it's really important that you hydrate.
Yeah.
And people, it's so great to have people come in and just throw their medicine bottle away.
Right.
Some of the testimonials you get,
or not drop $30,000 on an orthopedic surgery that might not be needed,
or $50,000 on rehab because they got hooked on opioids.
Right. And I always tell people that too. I'm like, it's not that we're against surgery; we're against unnecessary surgery.
Exactly.
When somebody needs it, by far, we're going to definitely refer them out. We don't have some illusion that we're going to fix a torn ACL or something like that. But if they can't figure out exactly why they're hurting, operation isn't the first route to go. Yeah. Conservative therapy is always going to be the thing that you should try first.
Yeah. I had somebody come in yesterday. I was up in my office in Los Alamos yesterday who was scheduled for surgery because she had sciatic pain.
Uh-huh.
They were going to go in and they were going to try and move the sciatic nerve off the muscle.
Whoa.
I thought, well,
that's invasive.
Invasive, right?
Holy cow.
So I treated her for the first time yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
She got up off the table and she was in tears because the pain was about 60% less in just one treatment. I said, it's not going to last. I mean, you're going to do things in the next couple of days that are going to make this come back, but at least you see.
And it won't come all the way back, right?
Yeah, you're going to get some results, and it's going to be some lasting results. So, someone like her, 3 treatments is a good start. Sometimes you got to get 6 or 8 or 10, She was so locked up and so dried up in that area that every time she moved, she was just bringing the bony structure out of alignment and nicking that sciatica because it was just one dried up blob of tissue, in that glute, and just get in there, work it, get some tissue flowing, get some blood flowing, and it softens up,
Makes perfect sense.
So, it's just, it's the way of the future, and it was all from the past.
There you go. Yeah, and I always tell people that too. I mean, we've probably got 50 or 60 medical doctors as patients, and many that refer directly over here all the time. Even some types of specialists that I'm like, man, I don't know. Like we had Dr. Amy Garcia on, who's an OBGYN, and I have another patient, Dr. Hansen, and she's a urologist. And so when they're really stuck with cases, they'll send over people with lower back issues. And, you know, some of them are more complex, but we're hitting at least 50% even on these crazy cases that we don't even know about just by treating the fascia and the lower back and the sacrum because those nerves wrap around and go to the front. And I'm not plugging that because I want more of those patients, but it's, you know, those are out of our wheelhouse. That's not even the type of patients that we're expecting. We're expecting, you know, back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, carpal tunnel, but you can fix a lot of things that you would never think.
Exactly. But that's what's starting to happen in our clinic up there now.
You're getting a lot of specialists referring in?
Specialists referring in because, you know, because
they're stumped, right?
They're stumped. You know, what, I can't do surgery for this. The drugs, I don't want to keep on giving drugs. They're not working. You know, again, it's so simple. It just makes sense. It's all about neurovascular bundle flow, right? Nerve, lymph, blood has got to have a free flow from that spine to where it's supposed to go. And if it's impeded by a malaligned vertebrae that makes a muscle spasm, that makes the muscle close down around that neurovascular bundle and creates inflammation and pain down the line, what are you going to treat? You know, I've got calf pain, right? So if I've got calf pain, are you just going to treat the calf, or are you going to treat the neurovascular bundle that goes all the way back up to the spine? Right. Carpal tunnel is a perfect one. Right. We treat carpal tunnel all the time. And what do? Carpal tunnel surgery. They go in and they move that nerve off the bone there, so it stops the pain.
Right. They cut the transverse carpal ligament to
gives more room in there for the nerve. But what created it? The malalignment in the neck and the tightness and the inflammation.
Causing neural inflammation to where it swells.
So they get a little bit of relief for a while, but they did nothing to correct.
And it comes back oftentimes.
So, you know, I can't tell you how many carpal tunnel surgeries we've saved over the years, you know.
That's awesome.
And, you know, I mean, that's probably the most,
overdiagnosed, over surgical recommended condition.
Everybody gets it.
Everybody has carpal tunnel.
Everybody's got, if they can't figure anything,
pain anywhere in your lower arm, carpal tunnel.
Fibromyalgia.
Yeah,
that's another big one.
Everybody has fibro. Huh?
It's dehydration. You know, so they have pain, they have headaches, they don't know why it is. Well, you got fibromyalgia. And truly, they do. But that's the dehydration of the tissue, because if that muscle, that fascia dries out to the point where it's gluing layer to layer of muscle and creating a knot, it's painful, it's inflamed, and it's fibromyalgia.
Right.
You know, but what are you going to do? You're going to give drugs to get rid of that, or are you going to give injections? I mean, people go and get injections in these things, and that's
which causes scar tissue too.
It causes scar tissue and causes more constriction. Yeah. So you want to open that. You want to open the flow. I always tell people, if you step on the garden hose, the water doesn't come through real well on the other side. Right? If you get muscular tension in the shoulder, right, it's going to diminish flow all the way down to the wrist.
Right.
So you got to get the foot off the off the garden hose, so you get nerve, blood, lymph flowing down and flowing back.
Sure.
So
the internet has been really cool for a lot of different ways, including social media. It's allowed a lot of people to start to see these types of therapies and become aware of things like nephropathy, where it would be a lot harder to grow it in the absence of that kind of a medium. But in that same medium, there's always going to be naysayers and people like that. And I've noticed that over the last couple years, there's a group of people, whether they're physical therapists, that don't get results, or whoever else, and they're really trying to downplay the results of manual therapy. They claim it's placebo. They claim it doesn't do anything. What would you say to those kind of people?
Next time you get hurt, come and see us.
Yeah, the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
Because what they always want is an abstract, right? They want to study. Like,
and you know there there's validity to that. I mean, there should be more.
You guys have done
We're working on more and more. We've just actually
published literature.
We've just hired a chair for naturopathic research. So we're going to start doing research out of the school now, because part of the graduation is doing a naturopathic research project.
Right.
So it's taught
dissertation.
The dissertation, and
which was really, in my experience, I didn't have to do that for chiropractic, and so I was a little bit taken off guard when you guys required
I remember you
a dissertation, and I was like, wow, I have a master's degree also, so I have past thesis, but I was a little taken back, and I think my paper ended up being, 60 pages or something like that, and the level of accountability that it was held to, it was really impressive to me to see naturopaths taking literature and research that seriously, and that's something that I found very appealing personally.
Yeah, thanks. And we're doing a much better job with that. So our actually research method starts in the very first quarter. There's a class every quarter throughout all 3 years that brings you right into your dissertation. Because, number one, when we went to the medical board, they would not license the school, right?
Sure.
When we were under licensing and regulation, they licensed the school and the profession. But when we went to the medical board, said, you got to go to higher ed. Right, so higher ed's got to give you your license of New Mexico. So when we went to higher ed, their qualification was that we had to have a bachelor's degree in order for them to get in, and we also had to have a thesis,
Sure.
a capstone project.
Capstone, okay.
So we added that back then when we got licensed by them back in 2014. 2014, yeah,
Okay.
by higher ed, and so that project has developed into we're going to start, getting research out there so we can satisfy the naysayers,
Yeah.
in manual therapies. And that's something we're excited
And,
about.
and so naturopathy is a profession, correct? It's a profession. So I think a lot of just lay people out there get sort of confused on the difference between layman. Layman. His name's Layman. Every time that happens, yeah. I could just see it. So many people get confused. They don't know the difference between profession and treatment. So they'll talk about things like chiropractic, getting chiropractic treatment or naturopathic treatment or physical therapy treatment. But those are professions, right? So that entails a scope of practice, a board. What do you say to people, and how do you educate them to know the difference between the two? Because not everything that a licensed naturopath does will technically be naturopathic treatment, correct? Stretching, nutrition,
No,
those things all fall within the scope.
Yeah, our scope of practice, corrective exercise, we're able to order, MRIs, imaging,
Which physical
blood
therapists
tests.
in New Mexico can't order x-rays or MRIs or anything. They can't order those.
They
can't.
okay.
I know for a fact they can't.
Okay. All right. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, they
Because
can't
in
order
other
imaging.
states they can.
Even though they have a doctorate and now people are allowed to see them, they still don't have that level.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
But we have that in our scope of practice. So
And you can use, all the machines, ultrasound, e-stim, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So we have, light, air, and heat is part of our practice. Nutrition is part of our scope of practice. And we
So there is some
touch-
difference between the scopes of practices of all three of those, but there's a lot of overlap too. Is
A
that
lot of overlap. So they're very similar. And as a matter of fact, when we went to get ourselves licensed, back in 2000, the chiropractors came in, the physical therapists came in, and they wanted to make sure that we were differentiated, that we weren't calling, even the acupuncturists came, that we weren't doing things that were infringing on their scope.
all
per
the
se.
turf battles?
Yeah, exactly. So,
Instead of worrying about the patients, let's all worry about our turf, right?
You know what? I'm really proud to say, though, that we're working very closely with the chiropractors in New Mexico.
Good.
And, we're working together. We introduced legislation this past session to add manual therapy to the Medicaid reimbursement.
Okay.
We did not get it together, so they'll be doing that. So we didn't get it through last session. It usually takes, a 2 or 3 year process, but we're going to come back at it next year, and we're working together as a team.
Nice.
And I think it's going to really help. They're seeing that we're working, we believe in this, and the chiropractor and myself, you even went, we sit on the governor's commission on alternative treatment for opioid.
Right.
And so they've got a naturopath on the board, they've got a chiropractor on the board, they got an acupuncturist on the board, they got a PT on the board, along with a lot of medical people. So New Mexico is very, very progressive. They really are. It's and I think it goes because of the traditional healers here.
Sure.
Right. It just goes back into the
culture.
The culture. The cuñoneros and the herbalists, and so it really was a we found a home here.
The native faith healers too, right?
Yeah,
the Navajo faith healers,
exactly.
and Pueblo faith healers.
Exactly.
That's interesting. So you said something earlier that was very interesting, and I kind of see that in our society in general. Like, as we progress, I think it's important that we don't throw out the things that have worked, right? So, like, we've worked really hard to be progressive as far as equal rights for gender, race, all these kind of things. But somehow we've kind of come full circle, and now it's like people are offended if you hold the door open for them, or if you say, like, yes, ma'am, or yes, sir. And the intent there is good, right? To give up your seat for an older person on the bus or something something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And I think we've pushed too far past that point where like you don't have to throw the good attention out with it as well. And I sort of feel like that's maybe something that happened in medicine as well. Like, you know, we had some of the stuff that was really great before. We had the manual therapy. We had the soft tissue work. And in this quest for technology and medication and progress, we sort of threw out the good old things that work really well too.
Right.
And I think that we can do both of those things. And I think you need to do both of those things. We do need equal rights for everybody.
Yep.
But also we shouldn't be ostracizing people who are trying to do well. If I hold the door open for somebody,
Yep.
that doesn't mean that I think that they're too weak to hold the door open. I'm trying to be nice. I'm giving it my seat I'm respecting my elders. You know, I'm respecting authority.
Compassion.
Like some of those things are timeless, right? Like they don't
Yep.
need to go away.
Well, you know, exactly right. And these are full of compassion types of therapies, right?
Right.
We're touching people. We're spending time with people. And that's how it's all starts.
Well, and
you
how
know?
many people are ever touched by their doctors, right? We're social animals, and
Yeah.
our society has kind of built, you know, through abuse, which is necessary to curb some of that, but also some of this, you know, glass window kind of stuff where like people are scared to shake each other's hands anymore. Like we are primates, we are social communal creatures. Like
Yeah.
we do have hormonal changes that happen when we hold somebody's hand or shake somebody's hand that are good for us. I mean, they're actually part of our physiological being. So if you're somebody that is maybe not in a relationship or not in a loving relationship or whatever else, like how often are you interacting with other human beings in a way that there's actually energy transferred and touch transferred? And I think a lot of people are missing out on that. And I think that when you're getting manual therapy from somebody, the way that your body responds, the mechanoreceptors, you know, all those things is so good for our bodies that we're actually neglecting that.
Yeah. It's I hear it all day long, you know, people coming in and just thanking us for the treatments.
For
You know,
spending the time, for
spending
listening,
the time
for-
for, you know, and our interns in particular, right? We have the intern clinic running within the naturopathic medicine clinic.
And that's a
up in Santa
discounted
Fe.
price, right?
Yeah, intern treatments are only $35.
Yeah. So if you guys are on a budget, you know,
Yeah.
that's a really cheap and effective way to get
Yeah.
naturopathic
and
therapy.
our, you know, it takes 2 to 3 weeks to get in to see an intern. in
Oh,
our
wow.
clinic
You guys are
now.
busy now.
Yeah, it's really busy. And
What if somebody
most
just
of
came
it-
and waited? Would somebody see them?
Somebody will get in.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody. We're able to get people in. You
So
know,
if somebody's
but-
in a lot of pain, they
like
can
a
show
new
up at the
patient-
clinic. And they may not be right away, but if they wait long enough,
Yeah,
somebody will be
usually
able to get them. That's
Someone's
awesome.
usually around. Yeah, we try to help, and we have just slews of senior citizens coming up because you know the Medicare doesn't cover this yet. You know?
Sure.
So we get a lot of senior citizens that come in and get treatments, and you know they just walk out smiling, and you know they feel good, they're touched, they feel loved.
Right.
You know, and it's a wonderful.
That somebody
way.
actually cares about them.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I tell people that, like, even how many people in your lives will sit down and listen to you for 20 minutes? Most people don't have a spouse or a friend or anybody
Yeah.
that would do that. You know,
Yeah.
they don't get that kind of human interaction. And so some of that is, you know, obviously we're making big changes in their physical well-being, but the emotional component to be able to just tell somebody what's wrong with you and have them give you answers, I think some of that is like a huge part of the healing process.
It is. It is so important for people to get touched.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming in. You know, it's sunm.edu.com, correct?
sunmedu.com. Yeah.
One more time.
sunmedu.com.
Okay. And they can email you if they have questions?
Yep.
Is that something?
Dr.Nuzzo, Nuzzo, at NMNM, Nancy Mary
There you go.
.org.
Okay. And obviously a lot of people know me, you know, from the internet, from naturopathic treatments. But guys, this is essentially the new founder. Like nobody around has more experience or knowledge about this profession. So if you're curious, he's certainly somebody you want to reach out to. You know, he can get you set on the right position, get you into the school, whatever you need to do. Hook you up if you're out of state, probably find you a naturopath somewhere nearby to where you can experience that. And you know, just keep moving this profession forward to where it can heal people.
Thanks, Doc.
Yeah,
This is
absolutely.
really a great opportunity. I really appreciate the
Yeah.
work you're doing, and you know your name with naturopathy is really spreading this word, and I appreciate it.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
Awesome. JW Raw without M&M. Hey, it's a wrap. Thank you guys very much.
All right. Thanks.
Through these doors walk the greatest fighters in the world.